Dave Glover Show. So as you know, Marc Bulger and I are buddies, have been for a few years, and for years now, he's been kind of telling me stuff privately because he was still playing and signing new contracts and so forth and so on. And now that he is just a regular citizen, he can kind of talk openly about things that before he felt like he should kind of keep his mouth shut. And with this new lawsuit on behalf of former NFL players, mostly because of head injuries and accusing the NFL of all sorts of things, everything from not telling them the truth to actually covering up the injuries and how bad that they could be and how they could lead to in older age. And there are some horrible, just absolutely terrible, very, very sad outcomes for so many players, up to and including death, some by suicide. And if you've seen Deerdorf lately, that poor guy just has a hard time getting around, and Conrad Dobler and these guys who we grew up watching. So this first part here, we're just going to talk to Marc about, because we're all of us armchair quarterbacks are fascinated with what it's like to play the NFL, and those of us who played high school or maybe even a little bit of college think we know, but we really don't know. Good to see you, man. How are you?
Good to see you guys. Nice to be in studio.
Yeah, exactly. Good to have you in here. So we've talked about this a lot, and I try not to geek out too much when we're talking, but once we start talking NFL, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to geek out here. What does it feel like when, Albert Hainsworth hits you and spears you in the back because your left tackle missed a block and that kind of stuff? So kind of walk us through your career and injuries in your career and what each one of those would kind of like to deal with real life playing in the NFL in a game. That's
why it's fun to have lunch with you every once in a while, because I forget a lot of the injuries I've had. Like most football players, they add up over the years, and there's a lot, some painful, some not so painful, but I've broke my collarbone, I broke my index finger 3 times, my thumb, my pinky, 8 ribs, blew my AC joint out in my shoulder 5 times, broke my leg, tons of sprains, the stitches, all that stuff doesn't matter. But the one injury that wasn't very painful but was the scariest was in 2002 in Seattle, the second to last game. I got caught from behind trying to leave the pocket, and obviously that didn't take much for the guy to get me.
Yeah,
but
you were so fast.
I was. I fell forward, and down with me, I put my head straight down, which you're not supposed to do in football, and he compressed, and I think it's my upper back, T5 and 6. I got some fractures, and first thought went through my head. I was laying on the ground face first. I said, uh-oh, this isn't good. I felt something, and it was scary. I moved my arms first to make sure they could move, and then I said, just hopefully I can get up.
Wow.
So I got up and was able to walk off, but I knew something was wrong and went over to I forget the name of the hospital right downtown there in Seattle, and I'm on getting wheeled in, and that neck contraption, whatever it is, and they tell me I have that, but it'll be okay. But as we'll get into, I decided to come back the next year, and it's one of those things that football players were a little hard-headed, but it's a personal choice.
How many confirmed concussions have you had?
I don't know. I know I missed a couple games, 2 or 3, 4 or 5, something like that. But I think 3 or 4 since high school. But at least 10 or 15.
Yeah.
That I can 100% I've had. And I don't think that's uncommon.
And what does it feel like for those of us, even if you've had a concussion from a car accident or something, you haven't had it, being in the NFL, wearing a helmet and taking a hit? Walk us through one of your concussions. What happened? What did it feel like?
Yeah, pretty much like a car wreck. It's not completely different from any other hit. It's just, you just can't focus back in as quick as you want to. I remember one, they put me back in the locker room or some room, and I'm laying there, and they ask you the questions, and you're like, okay, come on, here's my name, and then they ask you your birthday, and you can say that, things that can just come right off your tongue, and they ask me the month, and I'm getting ready to say it, and it was so frustrating. I just couldn't get to it. You knew the month, and I couldn't get to it. And I definitely teared up a little bit because it was so frustrating to have that feeling that, what a question, what month is, and you couldn't answer it, and that's why it was so scary.
Was it the Monday night Chicago game that you told me about? I was at that game, and you got hit, and you went back in, and you ran the next play, and kind of didn't know where you were, and then came out the next play, or was that a different game?
Monday night Chicago was when I had my bone ripped off my finger there, and they had to stick the needle in and touch the bone. That didn't feel real good. But there's been other, there has been, you'll go a couple plays that you're still trying to regroup, but it's not one of those sports where, the manager can come out onto the mound and waste time.
Give you some time.
It's, you got 30, 35 seconds to get going again, and sometimes the next play goes bad, and you just try to weather the storm, and sometimes you'll just signal over to the sideline that you need a run play.
Yeah.
Hey, I can't throw this play.
Mark said he would answer questions too. So 314-969-9797, 866-455-9797. Let's go ahead and kind of get into this lawsuit, and we can come back and talk about some of the injuries and so forth. So as I understand, I went to the website today. There's a website dedicated by the attorneys representing former NFL players, as most attorneys do, soliciting business and saying, hey, if you are a former NFL player and if you've had concussions or any sort of these lingering and you would like to get in on this lawsuit. And when we talked about it, you had sort of the same view that I did, but I was kind of surprised that an NFL player had it. Talk me through what your opinion is on the lawsuit and taking the risks and so forth and so on.
To be candid, I haven't read the lawsuit, so for me to say I know exactly what they're going for would be dishonest. But I have my suspicions with these class action lawsuits. They're probably going for money. Now, if it's for research and it's for, hey, let's take care of these guys, because there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to find things over the years, and it's going to be proven. And we have to improve safety in football from the NFL level all the way down to Pop Warner. I just think it's a slippery slope, and I just think there can be some overreaction right now. And I'd hate for the NFL and fans to overreact with what's going on now, because it's a volunteer sport. The military is volunteer. Our police officers who are out there, they know it's the possibilities. We know going in that you can be paralyzed. It happens every year in high school, college. Fortunately, not that much in the NFL, but it does. That next play, you might not be able to move your arms or legs for the rest of your life. And I just think that if you didn't think that concussions could cause something, if you're willing to play and you knew the possibility you could be paralyzed in the next play, that I don't think that decision would have been affected. That say, hey, maybe you could have some long-term issues, because guys in baseball still trying to take steroids, and everyone knows it's not very good for you. It's going to kill you. But that's what sports is, and we know going in that's the rules. And I just think there should be more personal responsibility. So
you weigh it out, risk, reward, you make your decisions, and you live with it.
I do it 100 times over. Football's done more for my family, my life, than I could ever imagine. And that's why I say it's a slippery slope, that this isn't going to be the last lawsuit. There's going to be 2, 3, there's thousands of guys, and then there's going to be 10, 20 more.
Yeah.
Then what? You go after college coaches, and then we go after high school coaches because they weren't aware of it. This is an evolving process. We're learning, and they're doing their best. And the same guys who are complaining that the NFL is getting soft, they might be in one of these lawsuits down in the future. So it's learning process. But there's a guy they just signed in Tampa. Eric LeGrand. He was at Rutgers, and he was paralyzed. And they signed him. But, I haven't seen anyone on the Buccaneers leave the team yet, because they see a quadriplegic from football.
So you don't think that had they come to you in your rookie season and said, look, read this document, it says here that it's scientifically proven that multiple concussions can lead to early onset Alzheimer's and altered emotions and feelings, and even in some situations, suicidal thoughts, you're still signing that rookie deal?
Heck, I think everyone is. 99.9% of the guys are. There's signs that, hey, wearing this helmet and put your head down could cause spinal cord injuries. If that's not enough, that you can be paralyzed or possibly killed from that, I don't know what is. Guys have died, the guy up in Minnesota from the heat. Guys die in high school football. It's a nasty sport, and that's why it's volunteer. You don't have to play. I respect guys who say, hey, I'm not letting my kids play. My parents actually made me play for a year because they don't want to. They said, we're not letting you waste your talent. You got to try it out for a year. But it's a choice for anyone. I don't know why that. I think it's disrespectful for people to think that, hey, I'm smarter than this parent, or I'm too. Someone else is smarter than this guy. I knew what I was doing. I don't need someone to tell me what to do with my body. And like I said, I would do it again. And this is knowing that I've had 10 to 15 concussions, and I don't know what's in store for me in 10 or 15 years, but it's on me. I knew exactly what I was doing.
My pal Marc Bulger live in studio with us and telling us about some of his injuries. There's a list of, 15 or 20 of them, serious and, not serious. Having your finger ripped off the bone, which you said was the most painful thing you had. Just like pain right at the moment. That was sticking the needle in and hitting your bone was the worst.
Yeah, trying to get back in the game. They, didn't have time to put it under the X-ray. They just went right in with the needle and had to find the joint.
When I first met Marc a few years ago, he was a fan of the show, and we went out to dinner with our wives, and I was making him laugh, and he was like, "Stop making me laugh." So I would try to make him laugh more. He's like, "No, I'm not kidding. I have how many broken ribs do you have?"
At least 2 on the left side, yeah.
But it was a contract year. So he couldn't miss practice or a game because then they're going to call him, puss and say, we're not going to pay any money.
That happens in non-contract years, too.
Right. But so what do they shoot you up with? What's it called? Toradol?
Toradol, that's, you get the shot, in your rear end.
Yeah. Every game?
Towards the end of your career, you see most guys do, yeah.
Yeah. And what does that feel like? Just takes all the pain away?
It doesn't take it all away, but it dulls it. So you can get through a game, but the ribs were a different deal. That when you feel your ribs moving around when you're getting hit, they can't shoot it up with Novocaine because they fear you puncturing your lung when they do it. I mean, they tried, but they couldn't go deep enough.
I knew Marc had a different job than me. We used to go to dinner a lot on Mondays because that was your day off was Tuesday, right? Mm-hmm. And I showed up one day and he was wearing shorts, and I knew he had a rough game and took a couple of really bad sacks, and his whole leg was just black as my shirt. And I said, "Oh my God, what happened?" He said, "Oh, I got stepped on." And just like, "Let's go to dinner." I'm like, oh, I would be in bed being waited on for a month with that kind of thing. So someone like Steven Jackson, I mean, it must take him 3 days of the week just to kind of be able to get out of bed and function, doesn't it?
Yeah, my last year here, I know he pretty much didn't practice during the week because they should auction that off at a charity event sometime. Let you go in the training room on a Monday morning after a game.
Yeah.
And it's I know you go out to the hospital or the facility and they have 6, 7, 8 MRIs a day lined up for guys. I had 20, 25 MRIs at least throughout my career. So I mean, it's big injuries and you have 2 days to recover and it's right back at it.
But you also got paid millions of dollars to do this, and I think the bottom line, I'll just put words in your mouth, you can agree or disagree, is any reasonably intelligent person, you watch one NFL game and you're going to say, yeah, pretty brutal sport. So I'm either going to take the money and the risks of being paralyzed, dead, concussions, horribly injured, in a wheelchair, in a nursing home, or I'm going to say, no, I'd rather not have the $5 million. I'm going to go and work over here at a non-NFL job.
Exactly. The way I grew up, a lot of my friends, my family, I saw how hard it is to make $30,000, $40,000, and what you're able to make in the NFL. You go through a lot, but that's why I'm not complaining. You get paid well. There's a lot of risk, but it's if you don't want to get that money, then just don't play.
Mike calling in here and asking if the new equipment is so good that they use it as a weapon. And one time you told me that one thing you could do was go back to leather helmets and no face mask if you want to keep people from leading with their head.
That could be a way. You see guys in rugby, you don't see them going head first like they do in the NFL. That could be one way. I think the NFL technology has come a long way with the helmets, but the only thing that I fear a little bit in the helmet to helmet is you can get it. I've had a concussion from a knee to the head.
Yeah.
A D lineman comes up in your knee to the head, and then you can hit your head off the ground.
Were you surprised by the New Orleans Saints with the bounty gate?
I was surprised how open they were. I just think, they probably got a little bit too comfortable, maybe a little too arrogant, and that's why it came out. If they were probably warned once or twice. I don't think that the NFL found out, and they probably said, "Hey, this is one thing we're not going to deal with, player safety," and that was it.
Well, so we talked with Cusmano the other day that 10 years from now you may not even recognize the same game, the NFL, because of political correctness and lawsuits, and it's already starting with protecting the players, which is a great thing. Do you think that can happen? I mean, can you imagine your game 10 years from now being a completely different game?
That's why I hope we can just move on from this. Definitely learn. It's going to be an issue. We can learn as much as we can, but I don't think we should overreact. Like I said, it's a voluntary game. Sarah Burke, the girl, the freestyle skier, she was killed back in January or whatever, and they're not going to ban that sport. It's NASCAR. You can die. It's a violent game. The guys playing it know how violent it is, and it's their decision.
When we come back, for all of you old athletes and those with very young athletes, Dr. Marc Bays, who has a subspecialty about concussions, will join us and tell you exactly what a concussion is, how to avoid them, and if you've had them, what to look forward to in the future. Dr. Matt Bays joins us to give us the medical side of what's going on with the concussions, and not just the NFL, but in sports, not just even pro sports, but college, high school, kids sports. Doc, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
And you were just talking, give us the term again for the long-term effects of concussions.
So this is something called chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. It used to be known as dementia pugilistica. Back in the 20s it was first described. It was in boxers only. And the scary thing is we're seeing this all over the place, and even in young football players that have died young.
You talked about Chris Henry from the Bengals.
Correct.
Who died in an accident falling off of a truck, and I guess they looked at his brain and found it at 26 years old.
Right. So Chris donated his brain, and the researchers out at Boston University, head by Chris Nowinski, the former pro wrestler who teamed up with some of the NFL docs. And these guys have a program now where all these old players are donating their brains. Bob Probert out of the NHL did it. Derek Boogaard was another young hockey player who did it. And what they're finding is some characteristic changes in the brain and some deposition of certain very abnormal proteins and loss of brain volume that's consistent with this diagnosis.
So would it look like an Alzheimer's? Would it look like a dementia?
It looks specifically different from Alzheimer's, and that's the problem, is it is not Alzheimer's. But it has some of the same effects. So the clinical signs and symptoms are very similar with memory loss, aggression, depression, just loss of control of their mental status.
And do we know yet how little trauma it might take to lead to this condition?
We don't, and I think there's something like over 200 players currently have signed up to have their brains donated, including one of the names I read was Zach Thomas, a middle linebacker from the Dolphins. Some of these players have already signed up for this. So as time goes by, we'll be able to track better, hey, how many concussions did this person have? What did their brain look like? And we'll know that in the future.
And do we know, I don't know if you have kids or not, but would this keep you from letting your young kids play contact sports?
That's a timely question. It's been asked of me, and I do have a 6-year-old son. I played a little bit of college football myself, and I don't know, I may have had one concussion. It scares me. It does. I think more importantly is the recognition of the problem when you have a head trauma and what to do after that. So I think what would scare me is being in an organization that doesn't know how to take care of that, or players who aren't educated and parents that are educated. So I wouldn't say, no, my son can't play football.
So the old school, like what I grew up in, was, hey, I don't feel right, coach. I got your bell rung. Get back in there, you sissy. That should just go away right now.
That should go away. The term bell rung is probably something we don't want to hear anymore, because that already minimizes what happened.
Yeah. And so what are the signs for any coach out there, whether it's football, hockey, wrestling, the signs that there has been some sort of a head trauma, brain trauma, concussion?
Well, on the field, and the first responders are going to be the coaches and the parents, because there's not a doctor at every game. No way. So the signs are confusion, maybe taking too long to get up, maybe running the wrong play the next play, the 1,000-yard stare, glassy-eyed look. That's a real obvious one. So I always say the obvious concussions are obvious. They're easy. But the subtle hits that maybe that didn't look right, or even worse, the real bad hits that should have a problem, and the kid gets up and he looks great. That's actually the scariest one, because that happens all the time. I take care of 2 high school football teams here, and these kids are already using a huge amount of mass and velocity, and there's these big hits. Kids get up, they come off the field, and they look normal. Those are the scary ones.
And, Mark, how long did it take you when you had your diagnosed concussions to feel normal again?
It varies upon each concussion, and like you were saying, with the symptoms, that hits home, because as a quarterback, you're in the huddle and I'm looking 10 guys in the eye every play, and they're looking at me. So I get to see all 10 guys every time they come back from a play. Yeah. And I could tell pretty quick. I'm no doctor, but hey, this guy, if it's practice, get him out of the huddle. Or if it's a game, hey, you all right? We can call a timeout, because they have a distinct look that they're just distant. They're not there. And, as a quarterback, like I said, their eyes are all on me, so I got to see it thousands and thousands and thousands of times over my career. We have Doc Hagan on tomorrow, correct, Maxie?
Yes, we do.
So let's either have Dr. Bays on with him, or let's schedule next week to do this again for the whole half hour, in-depth about concussions in sports traumas, okay? Yep. Doc, if people out there say, I need to talk to Doc right away about myself or my kids, how do they get in touch with you?
The number is 636-449-7400 at craneclinic.com.
Marc, thanks so much for being here, for your honesty, and telling us your story. Appreciate it.
Thanks for bringing it to light.
Quick break. Well, I'll be right back. Dave Glover Show.